This is the Television Enthusiast Podcast, The Weekly Set.
Episode 46, recorded March 3rd, 2016. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Set Podcast. This is the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. I am your host and editor-in-chief of TV Enthusiast, Tyson. And joining me, as always, is our keeper of comics, Will Rorig.
Hello.
So today we're going to be talking about a few things we've been watching over the past couple weeks. I say a couple weeks because last week we did we had Ed join us and we did a spring preview. So we didn't get to talk about anything that we watched from that week. So we're going to be talking about what we've been watching, a little bit of Magicians some more, a little bit of 11/22/63, a little bit of Love. Might bring up Better Call Saul depending on how well we're doing on time. But we also have some news to cover, so I'm going to jump right into that. So our first story, Ian McShane, Al Swearingen himself from Deadwood, has been cast in American Gods as Mr. Wednesday / Odin. He's like a incarnation of the Norse god Odin.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So he's one of the central characters on the show. The central character, the protagonist of the show, is a guy named Shadow Moon, who's being played by Ricky Whittle from The 100. You've still only seen the first episode of The 100, right?
Still only seen the first episode of that.
So I don't think you've seen his character yet.
Probably not.
Yeah, you'll see. He shows up fairly early, but I don't think you've seen him yet. I think he's like in the second or third episode, something like that.
Okay.
He might be in the first episode. I don't know. But he's one of the more major characters in it, and he is going to be playing the lead. That was already known. Ian McShane's going to be in Game of Thrones this season too.
Oh, that's amazing. That is just amazing. Okay.
So, yeah.
We need Ian McShane to be in everything.
Yeah. Ian McShane and Idris Elba.
Yeah, Ian McShane and Idris Elba.
Yeah. Put him in everything.
Our Laurel and Hardy. I don't know.
Dennis the Menace and Mr. Wilson.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Queen Victoria and her one of her lovers. I don't know.
I don't know. Oh my god. But yeah. That's pretty amazing. I'm super excited for American Gods.
Yeah.
I have Stars through Amazon. Like, I'm paying for it, so might as well. So I'm super happy to have that coming up because that is worth paying for Stars. Right.
Oh yeah, it's going to be so exciting. So I mean, we don't know if this is going to be the greatest show ever, or like we're going to hate it. We don't know. Obviously, we haven't seen anything of it, but chances are it's going to be pretty good. This is coming from Brian Fuller, who really hasn't done wrong yet on a show, and is coming off of his best show yet.
His best show. It's not like the source material is weak or anything or needs fixing. The source material is amazing. If anything, they can only make it worse.
Yeah, it got Neil Gaiman wrote the source material, American Gods, the book upon which it's based, and it Stars, which has done pretty good with the shows that it's picked up. I mean, it hasn't really made the kind of splash like HBO has, but I mean, if we think back, Spartacus was on Stars, Party Down was on Stars, Black Sails is pretty beloved right now, that's on Stars, Ash vs. Evil Dead, so...
It seems like Stars gives their showrunners a lot of creative freedom, it seems to me at least.
Which is awesome when your showrunner is Brian Fuller.
Yeah, exactly. Give that guy full reins and you're just gonna, magic's gonna happen.
So this is just really exciting news. Ian McShane playing Odin. So, yes. So this is gonna be cool. So, our next story up, there's gonna be a new show coming to Netflix called Godless. It's a limited series and it comes from Steven Soderbergh, the famed director of, movies like Sex, Lies, and Videotape and Ocean's 11. This is a Western set in the 1880s. And yeah, it's a limited series for Netflix. So Soderbergh's been doing a lot of different TV projects recently. He's got something going on at HBO called Mosaic that's supposed to be like interactive or something. It's like highly secretive. Nobody really knows what it is. And then he's got The Nick on Cinemax that's been pretty popular recently. And he did a movie a couple years ago show called The Girlfriend Experience. It actually starred Sasha Grey as like a prostitute, and he's adapting that as a TV series, I believe, for Star. So he's working TV like crazy right now. And this is like a gritty 1880s Western being filmed in Santa Fe. So
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big Steven Soderbergh fan. Less so a typical fan of Westerns. Mm-hmm. So gritty Steven Soderbergh Western does nothing to excite me.
I was never huge on Westerns, but I do like the gritty, like spaghetti, like larger than life kind of almost mythical Westerns.
I love Deadwood. I really love Deadwood. That's an exception.
So we'll have to see what this ends up being. But with a name like Godless, it instantly makes me think of something along the lines of like Unforgiven, like the old Clint Eastwood movie, which was like a really good Western, you know?
Right.
Really like a revenge flick kind of Western. So who knows? I mean, what this is going to be. Western is a very broad term. Basically means anything that takes place in America during a certain time.
Yeah, pretty much. Western is a very broad term. I mean, there are some amazing. My favorite Westerns tend to be ones that more accurately portray the time period.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of like a time period like I have a fixation on, but like most, you know, Western films, you know, they tend to be like cheesy, you know, like typical cowboy movies don't like interest me much.
We'll have to see what Godless is. We really know nothing about it. So, but yeah, it's another Netflix original. I mean, we're going to have a lot of these popping up. So this is just another one to fill out the ranks of Netflix shows. I mean, they got their like modern kind of powers type show with Sense8. They have their ridiculous comedy with Kimmy Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
They got their political drama. They got their prison drama, comedy / drama. They got, you know, all their Marvel shows, which are like whole genres on themselves too, with like Jessica Jones being kind of noir-esque and Daredevil being kind of like this like, I don't know, almost like religious drama. But yeah, it's just more from Netflix. Lots of stuff coming from Netflix. I'm interested in seeing what it's.
Yeah, definitely. I'm interested in seeing what it's going to be too. Oh, absolutely.
And our last piece of news here, Gene Roddenberry's son, Rod Roddenberry, is on board as an executive producer for the new Star Trek series that's being done by Brian Fuller. So another Brian Fuller related piece of news. So
that is awesome.
This is the creator of Star Trek Son getting involved in the new Trek series. So yeah, it's good news for people that are into the authenticity of Trek, I guess.
Yeah, it's good news.
I think Kat would probably be happy about this news if she was still on the podcast.
I think so too. I think so.
Fuller had a nice little quote he said about it, which I'm going to read just because I love Fuller's like language, you know, the way he writes. So he says, Gene Roddenberry, the great bird of the galaxy, left a finely feathered nest for all who love Star Trek to enjoy. And it is only fitting that Rod Roddenberry and Roddenberry Entertainment join our new Trek adventure to ensure that his father's legacy of hope for the future and infinite diversity in infinite combinations runs through our tales as Gene Roddenberry intended. Well, got to be a mouthful for me at the end there, but
wow,
I like that. The great bird of the galaxy.
The great bird of the galaxy. Galaxy bird. That's really cool. And also Brian Fuller was high when he wrote that.
High on track.
High on track, yes. High on life.
That wraps up for the news of the past week. So we're going to move on now and start talking about some of the shows we've been watching. So first up, let's talk about The Magician. So you haven't seen the current episode, but you saw last week's episode.
The episode where they're doing like the trials at school. The one trial was they cheated.
Through these trials that are being kind of all the first year students.
Yeah,
that are being kind of like hosted or presented by the second years and on. And yeah, so what did you think of this episode?
I thought it was pretty good. There was more of a focus on what's her name? The one girl there who got caught up with the hedge witches.
Julia.
Yeah, Julia. I was thinking Julianne for me, but yeah, Julia. there was a lot of focus on her. We got to see that one girl's mother.
Yeah, another blacklisted hedge witch.
Yep, another blacklisted head witch, and she found out why she was working for that evil hedge witch.
For Marina, yeah. I actually wrote down these names in preparation this time.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's Katie is the girl in question that's working for the evil head witch Marina. So yeah, that was going on. That was kind of a dramatic part of the episode.
That was a dramatic part of the episode. Oh my god, the ending to that when they cast that spell and to get to her Marina's file cabinet where she's supposedly keeping those spells she stole from Break Bills. Mm-hmm. They cast the spell and they get the file cabinet, and then inside it's just like this note from Marina. It says "nice try," and then that one woman's like mother like dies horribly, like blood.
Has like a massive aneurysm.
That's like a massive aneurysm, like blood everywhere. And it was, oh my god, it's pretty gruesome.
Yeah,
and you get a sense of like how evil like Marina really is.
Yeah, and how dangerous this world is.
Yeah, how dangerous this world is. You know, it's like I don't think Julia has ever been exposed to like how dangerous any of this was until that moment.
Yeah, Julia didn't get her encounter with the beast. You know.
Yeah.
She didn't have that moment. So
she didn't have that moment. So this was like Julia's like kind of beast moment.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Exactly. And then the rest of the episode was pretty cool too. Seeing the challenges, you know, and the first year students go through them was fun. It was definitely an episode. Also on that side, flip that coin. It was definitely more focused on Penny than anybody else. I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Penny is
that part of the story. Yeah.
Yeah, Penny is still dealing with accidentally transporting to Fillory and encountering the beast, and also a woman who is being held captive by the beast. And there's a scene where, you know, Penny's saying, you know, he could still hear that woman in his mind, and he just chalks it up to a part he calls, you know, stuff you can't do shit about. And it's and there's a lot of introspection. That woman Penny is with, I can't remember her name for the life of me. Of course she's.
I thought I had it. That's Katie.
Katie.
That's the girl who just lost her mom and doesn't know it yet.
Yeah, Katie. She admits to Penny that she had been using him and lying to him from the start because Penny admitted to her that he loved her.
Yeah, they had to. They were in a situation where, in order to complete the trial, they had to be like completely honest and open with each other.
Yep. In order to complete.
And so Penny was him telling, you know, that he loved her, that he could love her, and then Katie's was basically saying, "Yeah, I've been using you."
Yeah, I've been using you. Yeah, totally. Oh my god.
You gotta feel bad. You gotta feel bad for Penny at that moment, and then Penny starts to kind of like jerk, like there's something wrong with him. And we cut over
at the end.
Yeah, we like ducks or geese or something. But then we cut over to Quentin and Alice, who are doing the same thing, and they basically go over their kind of anxieties and issues, and they're freed as well. Yeah. And they also turn into ducks or whatever, and go flying off into the sky.
Go flying off into the sky. One of the best moments was the test where they had to capture the various animals, or in one person's case, chop down a tree. But each were given an incongruent animal and a tool with which to complete the task.
Yeah.
So one person had the right tool for a task, but they weren't assigned the right
task.
Thing,
yeah.
That task.
So so Alice had to cut down a tree, and she was given a rope.
yeah, I don't know how evil is that. So she's sitting there trying to figure out how to get a tree down with a rope. And
And I forgot what Quentin was supposed to catch a fish, and I forgot what he had.
He had like a bow and arrow, like just
he had a bow and arrow.
He's like, "Oh, am I supposed to do spirit?" He's like, "Oh, come on, really? Only one arrow?"
And it ended up being, they had to kind of use some teamwork. So the kind of 4 central students that we always see together, or at least of the first years, all got together. That's Quentin, Alice, Penny, and Katie.
Yeah, Quentin.
And they figured out their trades. And I love what Quentin had, which was he had to have the rope. And the reason why he had to use the rope is because he went to cowboy camp.
He went to cowboy camp. And then he comes back and he's like, he's obviously been kicked. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, I went to cowboy camp. I freaking hated it." Oh my god! And that's at the end there, like freaking Elliot was like, "Oh no, you've completed it after you've cooked the pheasant, after you prepared the fish, and then after you blow the horse." And like everybody's like, and then he's laughing, and then he says something, and then he says to Margot, he says, "Do you see Quentin's face? It was like, okay, but I'm not going first."
Which basically it was.
Basically was.
Quentin will do pretty much anything to stay at the school. And he's kind of gullible, so he's like immediately like, "Oh shit, really?"
Yeah, he's like, "Oh shit, really?" So yeah, the show continues to be enjoyable. Definitely. It's interesting. Another interesting thing was they were at the beginning of the episode. They were talking about Penny how Penny went to Fillory, and then Penny encountered the Beast. And
yeah, that's right. The episode before was the first one where he had come back and shown the symbol to Quentin, and Quentin had identified it as being something from Fillory.
Yeah, and so another thing that happened in this episode was Penny mentions he saw the Beast in Fillory, and Quentin then mentions, well, there is no Beast in the Fillory novels. You know, that is like way off tone for what those books represent. Like way off tone. And then this sends Quentin into kind of a tizzy because now he doesn't know what to believe about Fillory, this thing that he's been obsessed with. You know, now, and so he's kind of distraught over that this episode. And that was another thing.
So yeah, I think we'll move on here. We'll talk probably about some more magicians next week. I want you to get caught up so we can talk about all the most recent episodes, because this last episode had some pretty cool stuff.
Was this episode 8 that you watched, or episode 7? Because I think episode 7 is like as far as it goes on the website right now. Yeah, it is. It only goes up to episode 7.
I think this was episode 8. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, because as of right now, I can only watch up to episode 7.
On Hulu or?
On SyFy.
Let me see. I looked that up real quick here.
Okay.
And no, it was episode 7. It's the most recent one. That's the one I just saw. I thought it was a little bit further than that, but I guess not.
Okay, cool. So
episode 4 was the asylum episode. Episode 5 was about Quentin's dad.
Yeah.
And episode 6 is the one you just saw with the test. So episode 7's the next one. So that's up there.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, that'll be maybe next week we can talk about episode 7 and 8. We'll have to see. But episode 7 had some cool stuff happening that I want to talk about. It's nothing like huge or anything necessarily, but just some cool stuff, you know. Let's talk next about Love. Now this is a new series on Netflix starring Gillian Jacobs and Paul Rust. It's from Judd Apatow. And Will, you watched the first 7 episodes, I believe. I watched through 5 episodes. So the last episode I saw is the one that had a guest appearance by Andy Dick.
Okay.
So yeah, let's talk about kind of stuff before that. In general, you talked to me before I started watching it, and you'd said that you'd watched some of it, and you described it as kind of like the not quite funny part of the towards the end of Judd Apatow movies.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't really know how to describe the show. A lot of people described it. I see it described a lot as like cringe comedy, but
there's definitely some cringe comedy in here.
I don't know if that's even accurate because there is some cringe in there, but it's not like overwhelmed. There's not a lot. It doesn't seem like it's intended to be.
Paul Rudd's character of Gus is very cringe.
Yeah, he is very cringe. But it doesn't seem like it's intended to be cringe or for cringe's sake. It seems like, I think Judd Apatow, at least in Gus, much more than maybe Mickey, he's just writing like what feels to him like these honest and real characters. And, Judd Apatow has always had like a fondness for nerds and geeks, like Freaks and Geeks was a show that he created, so like a character like Gus seems like very Judd Apatow, if that makes sense.
I think in general I'd say that the series it's a love story. That's what it is. And the thing is that we're usually used to breaking that down into either like a love drama or a love comedy, like a romantic comedy. Right. And I don't know if this necessarily fits either of those molds. It's kind of somewhere in between those.
It doesn't, yeah. It seems to me like Judd Apatow was doing his best to just write something that's real. And in reality, reality isn't broken down into, your life isn't a drama, it's not a comedy, it's just life. And I think that's what this show is going for.
Yeah.
So more than anything. So that I think in that way, that's what makes it so hard to describe, because you can't like assign a certain aspect to it. So there are things about this show, like there are dramatic moments, there's funny moments, there's cringe moments, that stuff definitely happens, but none of that stuff overwhelms or defines the show to the point where you can call it any of those things. So this is pretty unique in that aspect.
I really like Gilliam Jacobs' character of Mickey as this kind of like, kind of a hard rock party girl.
Yeah.
That's kind of just doing her own thing and trying to get by, and of course has her own little issues. I'm not too fond of Paul Rust's character of Gus. There are a few kind of off-putting aspects about his character that kind of,
there really are. I'm not. Yeah, he's kind of an off-putting character. And I found myself having the exact opposite reaction to him than the reaction I have to the protagonist of, Man Seeking Woman, which is very, very much so a comedy. But like where Jay Baruchel in that show seems like genuine and earnest and a good guy, and just genuinely a good guy that you want to root for. You don't necessarily want to root for Gus.
Gus is like the, when you always hear the people talk about like, oh, the nice guy, and nobody wants the nice guy. Gus is like the guy who thinks he's the nice guy.
Yeah, he
uses the whole nice guy thing as his excuse.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than actually being just flat out the nice guy.
Yeah, he's like that guy. Yeah, he pretends to be a nice guy, but then he could be a real jerk sometimes.
Yeah, and he's very cringy. I mean, I like the moments when he's with his friends, but when he's with girls, it can be a little creepy and a little cringy.
Yeah, it can be a little creepy, a little cringy. Yeah, definitely.
I think the thing that bothered me the most about him was his dealing with Arya, who that has to be Judd Apatow saying he's a Game of Thrones fan. The character named Arya, who's the child actress that he teaches on the set of the Wichita, I think is what it's called.
Wichita.
The show within a show on this, pretty much.
The show within a show, and with the showrunner who is so obviously a parody of Shonda Rhimes.
Yeah, definitely. But the character of Arya is this child actress on it that's played very bratty and hateable at first. But there's a moment in which, by the way, Arya is played by Iris Apatow, one of Judd Apatow's daughters. He manages to squeeze his daughters into almost everything he works on now, I think. But
he started doing that since like Knocked Up, I believe.
Yeah. I know like the two daughters and This Is 40, I think were both his as well. But Arya on this show, she's as a child actress, she doesn't have any friends, she doesn't have school, she doesn't have any of that, and so you kind of get like why she's so bratty and stuff like that, and the way she is, and the way she doesn't ever want to do the schoolwork and everything.
And she has like these typical like showbiz parents who care more about her acting career than probably her.
Yeah,
at this point.
I think the thing that made me really off-putting for Gus, what made me really kind of go like, I don't, was that she had a moment where she completely broke down because she didn't want to do the tests that she had to do, and she was it was basically like a cry for help. Like it was basically like her saying, "I don't want to do this.
Yeah,
I want to go to regular school. I want to have a regular childhood. I don't want to do this." And he just kind of like sat there through her whole thing, and then did the test for her, and then asked like for praise from his boss.
Yeah.
For taking care of the problem, which she just kind of turned back on him like, "So you want praise for doing your job?"
Yeah, so pretty much. So you want praise for doing your job, like yeah.
I was kind of like, if anything, that could have been a moment where he could have become a more, sympathetic character if he kind of took more of an interest in Arya's problem, but he didn't. He just kind of like ignored it, which was kind of frustrating. And I don't think we've seen her since then. We haven't seen that character since
he
on the show, at least for me.
He ignored it because he was thinking about himself, because he was told his job was on the line if she didn't pass that test. And she has this breakdown, and his reaction isn't to help her, it's just to do the test for her so that she passes and he keeps his job.
Yeah, which that is kind of off-putting for me. So that's one of the things that's kind of off-putting for him. The other thing is just kind of like the relationships he has with girls throughout the course of the show. He always comes across kind of creepy.
Did you see the episode where where he gets set up with
Birdie on the date?
With Birdie on the date, yeah.
Yeah, in the restaurant. That had a what's his name in it? Will Sasso is in
Will Sasso was the waiter, yeah. And he was like so cringy during that entire thing. Like,
yeah, I thought I was just thinking with the show has cringe moments. That's like it, that episode was pure cringe.
The show has cringe moments, but what surprised me was how so much of that cringe was driven by his character. It wasn't even like the situation, and it wasn't like because stuff accidentally happened, or it wasn't cringy because stuff went wrong or stuff didn't go to plan. It was cringy because of how his character was acting throughout that whole thing.
Yeah.
And it was like you could just see like the date dying, and there was like no reason for that to happen except his character was a douche.
Which is Birdie, the girl he was on the date with, is like the super nice character that just seems kind of over-eager to be kind of accepted, Yeah. Definitely wants to be friends with like Mickey and everything, and so she's like really kind of just accepting on everything and tries to be overly nice. She's another character that I'm not so sold on. Just she seems very unrealistic.
She's like over-eager. She wants to be accepted. I think with her there is an authenticity to her character.
At least what I've seen so far, the problem with me is that we don't see the other side of it. Like, we can see her being desperate for kind of like approval and stuff, but we don't see kind of like the toll that has on her, at least from what I've seen so far.
Okay, I don't think they go into it like at all. So far they really haven't.
So yeah, but it's just kind of like it's weird because when he was on his date with her, on one hand I could say like I kind of agree with some things that he's saying, like, you don't have to just put up with things that are unpleasant just because to keep everybody happy, but it's his way of kind of expressing that to her.
Yeah.
And not being able to read the cues himself and just act on it, but just to keep pressuring her to act, it comes off very creepy.
Yeah, it does. It comes off very creepy. Yeah. He doesn't read the cues. So it ends up with you got this character who is overeager, wants to be accepted, and she's totally turned off by it. She doesn't want to be accepted by this guy. She's not overeager anymore to be like accepted or loved by Gus, because Gus has totally managed to repulse her. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Mickey's like starting to have kind of feelings, and the way that kind of came on was kind of sudden and weird. Like, I don't know if they really developed her having feelings with him that much, but I do like the way that they explored, like when she talked to her boss and had to do a fake phone call with her boss. Her boss works as like a Dr. Phil type advice guy, on the radio, and she called him up and she's kind of explaining her relationship, and he's basically skewering her on how her life is just a fucking mess.
Yeah, her life is a mess.
And how, you know, like she has no chance of keeping a stable relationship. Like a relationship isn't going to be a cure-all for all of her problems. That's not going to happen. She needs to address her actual demons in order to do that. And he's right in saying that, but he's also kind of creepy.
He's also because he was like coming on to her and stuff, you know. And he's her boss, you know. And there's this point where she gets like this impression that she needs to fuck him in order to keep her job or something. And so
so that he can't so if he does anything, then she can claim sexual harassment.
Yeah, she can claim sexual harassment. She can get him. And so that's what she does. She has sex with her boss in order to be able to keep her job and to have something on him so that he can't fire her.
And she reveals this to her boss, and her boss is kind of like pissed about it because he's all, that's not what was going to happen. I'm not going to do that and stuff. And with all of his moral indignation over that issue, he acts kind of like hostile towards her since then.
Yeah, he acts
like passive aggressive hostile towards her, you know?
Yeah, he's like, yeah, exactly. Since then he's just hostile towards her, and it's like
So when he's kind of skewering her, and what he's saying is right, but when he's skewering her, it's like at the same time, it's kind of like, dude, what a dick, you know?
Yeah.
And so she starts second guessing everything in their relationship, their newfound kind of relationship they're going to have. And they were supposed to get together that night at like midnight, and she basically starts putting that on hold. And that's where she ends up running into Andy Dick.
Yeah. She ends up running into Andy Dick. Andy Dick, I don't know, I think in this show, Andy Dick is just playing Andy Dick. He's
a less creepy Andy Dick, because Andy Dick is super creepy.
In real life?
Actual, actors. Stuff he's done in real life. You hear stories and it's like, oh, God. That's just wrong. Like, you know, it's not even the case of him being funny. It's like, no, that's just wrong, you know?
It's just him being creepy. Like I guess Andy Dick is like a real life cringe comedy.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, this is a toned down Andy Dick, if you can believe that. If you watch this episode, just know that's a toned down version of Andy Dick.
It's basically him encouraging Mickey to be kind of a little bit wild and to have fun, you know, and just kind of talk and philosophize, you know? They're just kind of waxing philosophic about life and stuff, the two of them, as Mickey's talking about, you know, the possibility of trying to be sober, or, you know, like anything, like if this relationship has a chance. And Andy Dick just kind of like wants to get fucked up and get on the subway.
Yeah, exactly. That's all he wants to do. You know, they missed their stop. And there's this point where like Gus, like she was supposed to go out with Gus that night, and you know, and so Gus is like texting her, wondering what's going on. She's on the subway. She's in a dead zone. So like she makes a text to Gus but doesn't send, and so, you know, Gus thinks like she's ignoring him, and he's kind of freaking out, and that was basically that episode. After she gets off the subway, they reconnect, and she makes plans to hang out with Gus.
Mm-hmm. That's about the point to where I'm at.
Okay,
that's the end of episode 5.
So I won't say anything more of what happens, but yeah, I think you can pretty much guess at where it's headed.
Yeah. I'm gonna watch some more. I've watched through half of the series, so I imagine we'll probably talk about the rest of it next week.
Yeah, we'll talk if we end up finishing it by next week.
There's only 10 episodes.
There's only 10 episodes, and I'm 7 episodes into it, so it would not be a huge stretch for me to have this finished by next week. If Tyson watches another 5 episodes, then we can discuss the second half of the series, and that will be our 2-part discussion on love.
Not just the show. We're gonna take calls, give some relationship advice.
This podcast is now actually about love.
And speaking of love, for no reason, because that's not having anything to do with what we're going to talk about.
This is a bad segue.
The next show we're going to discuss here is 11/22/63, which is Hulu's first kind of original drama series, starring James Franco, based on a book by Stephen King and produced by J.J. Abrams. So we got to see in this episode, we talked last week about basically the introduction of the characters. This week, it's kind of going to a smaller focus. Instead of like following JFK around and stuff, this is about James Franco's character Jake trying to stop the murder of a guy he knows, a guy he knows in his class who in the first episode told this like crazy story about how his dad killed his family. And it was like I said, like the best scene of the episode was just this guy telling a story. And so this episode is basically him trying to write that, to stop that from happening. So basically what's
going on with Jake right now is he is completely demoralized. He is about ready to give up on this mission because he is finding that, you know, the past is pushing back. The past burned down the place he was staying, for crying out loud.
Killed the Boy Scout.
He's basically done at this point. And so he's ready to go back and just forget the whole thing, except he has this idea that he's gonna go and he's gonna try and prevent the murders of this guy's family, the guy from the beginning, from his class. He's gonna see if he can at least do that. You know, he's going to say, okay, so he's kind of like, okay, well, maybe I can't save John F. Kennedy, but maybe I can save this guy's family, at least. So I'm going to attempt that. So he goes to Kentucky, I think it is.
Yeah.
He goes to Kentucky in order to do that. And he meets this guy's father, played by, what's the actor's name? I knew this guy's name like last night too.
I didn't forgot to write that one down. But yeah, remarkably creepy performance, by the way.
Yeah.
Every moment the father was on scene was tense as shit.
It was. This guy is a total psychopath. Josh Duhamel. Yeah, he played.
He was in. He's been on a few things. I'm trying to remember. He was on a show called Vegas. And he was in Transformers.
He was on a show called Vegas. Yeah. He usually plays like these charming, you know, like these charming suave type. In this program, he plays just a scary as hell psychopath. Like every second he was on screen, you just tensed up because you did not know what he was gonna do.
Well, the thing is that he's not just this like wife beater that ends up murdering his whole family. That's not all there is to him. He's actually very smart, and he's in a town full of yokels, basically.
Yeah, he's in a town full of
yokels. And he resents that. And so when Jake comes in and kind of like is trying to get to know the guy to find a way to prevent him from killing his family, like it's almost like he almost likes it because it's like this challenge. Like, I'm in this town full of yokels that don't know anything, and here's this guy, and this guy's clearly smart, and I'm gonna fuck with this guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna totally fuck with this guy.
And so it takes him to a slaughterhouse and murders a cow in front of him after emasculating him.
The entire sequence was just tense as shit. I just did not know what the hell was gonna happen. Like that whole time, I was just like, oh geez, he's taking him. I'm like, he's got him. He's taking him somewhere. Oh my god, it's a slaughterhouse. He's showing him around the slaughterhouse, and like the room with like the flies. I'm like, all this hard, but then he gets the hammer and they murder this cow in front of him, and the whole time you're wondering, you know, what's he gonna do to James Franco? Is he gonna like go after him with the hammer or something? Nothing happens to James Franco there, but geez, talk about suspense. The whole episode just keeps you in this constant state of suspense, practically.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I actually had heard some complaints about this episode. People were saying, oh, this episode kind of wasn't as good, and you know, episode 3 is the best of them, and you know, this episode 2 is the worst. Having seen the 3 episodes, and without spoiling anything, I'll say I think the second episode was the best. Despite hearing that, just because it was so tense throughout the whole thing, and so like that character, I think, largely made the episode.
Yeah, largely made the episode. There was also another part to that tension where James Frank, he has to contend with the past, like intentionally fucking with him to prevent him from changing it. So you didn't know, like, when he's in these dangerous situations with this guy, you didn't know if like the past was also gonna fuck with him, you know, to stop him and put him in even more danger. And I think that also lends to the heightened tension, because you just literally don't know what's gonna happen at any moment in this episode. You know, oh my god, it's so good. And then that ending, oh Jesus! I mean, I was like, this show is amazing. I was like, I was pretty blown away by this episode.
Yeah, I was too, definitely. I felt like the tension was really at play. Besides going on and on about the tension and this creepy guy, and we don't necessarily have to break down every event that happened in that story, because we kind of summarized it in just saying how just messed up that whole situation was. But there was another thing that happened in this episode towards the end, which is that James Franco's character Jake ends up stumbling onto somebody else who's stalking the same father.
Bill Turcotte, who apparently Josh Duhamel's character killed someone, like killed his last wife.
That was his sister. Yeah, Bill's sister.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was his sister. So he wants Frank dead as much as anybody else. But he's like trying to stop Jake, and Jake like actually admits, he says, "I'm a time traveler," and you know, and the reaction is, well, Jake is some crazy guy. That's Bill's first reaction. But then at the end of the episode, you see he found the newspaper clipping Jake brought with him to the past
about JFK, yeah,
about JFK, and he's like, well, what the hell is this? And it's like, duh, I told you I was a time traveler. You think I was lying?
That's like to like talk about a different show for just a little bit. It's like on Lucifer, because I've been watching that show and I'm kind of like right on the verge of quitting that show constantly because the format sucks so much. But one of the things that I always kind of laugh about, like not in a good way, is Lucifer like is so upfront about who he is. He's always like, I'm the devil, I'm Lucifer, and they say like, oh, that's your stage name. He's like, no, I am the devil. He just kind of like flatly says it. He's constantly doing stuff that like makes no sense except for if he has some kind of supernatural ability. And like the female cop is like constantly finding excuses for why he's not. And so every so often she gets to the point where like she's like, who are you? What are you? And he's like, I'm the devil.
Like, duh.
Like, I've told you this already.
Wow.
The show is still finding ways to give her like excuses to not quite believe it and stuff. So it's, but we're not going to talk about Lucifer.
No, let's not drag this podcast down when we were going so strong. But that's basically this episode of 11/22/63. Anybody who hasn't watched it, yeah, I highly recommend it. This is, in my opinion, one of the best shows currently streaming on any streaming network. Not until Daredevil season 2 comes out does Netflix have anything currently running new that compares to this.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. Also, this is, I think some people might have a little trouble on the entry with the first episode, because we talked about the first episode does have some issues.
It is like there is like some clumsy
over exposition. Yeah,
and like I said last week, I understand why they did. They want to jump into the action. They want to get things rolling as fast as possible here. So they're kind of like they kind of like dump a ton of exposition on you just to get to the good stuff. And it is clunky. It is awkward. It can be off-putting. But if you're willing to, if you're willing to just shrug it off and say okay, and then just buckle in for the ride, then you'll have a good big time.
And episode 2, like I said, I'd heard before watching it, I'd heard people talking about how it was kind of the disappointing episode and stuff, and I could not disagree more.
No,
I think episode 2 hit the ground running. It was really good from beginning to end. It was super tense, and it just put this whole new wrinkle on the whole situation with this guy kind of figuring out about him.
Yeah, this adds an interesting that happened. That added an interesting new wrinkle. So now it seems like he has a sidekick, or at least somebody who maybe is willing to join his cause from the past, which is interesting.
Yep. So let's move on from that. We'll talk about 11/22/63, I'm sure, in the weeks ahead as more episodes come out. But now we're going to talk about shows that are coming up in the next week. So tomorrow, Friday, March 4th, House of Cards, or this should actually be today for anybody listening to it, probably, the podcast. House of Cards is hitting Netflix. This is the new season. Bosch is hitting Amazon. This is season 2, I believe. This is a show that stars the Man in Black from Lost. It's like a detective story. The channel Chiller has its first original series called Slasher. So you can watch Slasher on Chiller.
Nice. Yeah. Slasher on Chiller.
But yeah, so that's coming out. Those 3 are all coming March 4th. So if you're listening to this on Friday, then you're listening to it when these shows are all out.
Woo! All right.
Sunday, March 6th. Now this is one I'm interested in knowing what you're going to do on this, because March 6th is the return of Once Upon a Time. Are you going to check the first episode? I know you were like right on the edge of quitting, like rage quitting after the last episode.
No, I'm going to watch this. I don't know why. I just
glutton for punishment.
Yeah, I'm in this now. There's no leaving. There's just that, but it does not look good.
I think it's the first episode back. I think it's the 100th episode. So at the very least, you should get some fan service and some stuff to enjoy there.
Yeah.
And then you can decide not to watch it.
They'll probably bring Cinderella back for 5 seconds,
Yeah. So it's that same night, Quantico also returns to ABC. This is the series that Will, you didn't watch it at all, I don't think. I watched a little bit of it. I think Kat watched a little bit more and hated it the whole time, I think.
that
it was like a guilty pleasure for her, and then it just became something she just detested.
Yeah, I think so. It's probably a guilty pleasure for like a minute, but no, I have no interest at all in this. That trailer was enough to say no.
I think I watched like 4 episodes before I was like, no, I'm done. And I say that because I'm somebody who watches almost everything for at least a little bit.
Right.
So, yeah, it's like 4 episodes, and I was like, that's it. I can't take this anymore. And I probably would have stopped earlier, except Kat was watching it too, and I was like, well, it's something to talk about on the podcast at least. On that same night as well, The Last Man on Earth returns to finish up its 2nd season. This is really good. I think this is one you should watch if you get the chance. Well, it's really funny. Yeah, it's got some interesting stuff going on. The way the season 1 finale ended was like this really kind of cool turn that it took, and then that's kind of something they've been building up to since then. And just at the mid-season finale, they gave some finality to that, to like this new element that came up at the end of the first season, and it looks like that's going to actually kind of like really enter the show now. So that's me trying to avoid spoiling what it is.
Okay, sure.
So I'm really looking forward to that coming back and how that's gonna go on there. March 7th on Monday is the return of Bates Motel on A&E, and on the same night it's the debut of the Damien TV series on A&E.
Oh, okay.
And so we talked about this a little bit on our spring preview. Damien is a TV version of The Omen. It's like The Omen young adult year.
Right.
Starring Oliver Queen. From Smallville. So so that's going to be on March 7th. March 8th, this is one that we're both looking forward to, I think. Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. returns.
Oh, nice. S.H.I.E.L.D. is coming back.
So it's sad that Agent Carter's gone. It's sad that Agent Carter's gone, but it's nice to welcome back Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Back Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., exactly. So it's bittersweet.
And then Wednesday, March 9th is the debut of WGN's new series Underground about the Underground Railroad.
All right.
So this is about slaves escaping, and it's got what's his name from Law and Order SVU that was also in Wet Hot American Summer.
I don't know. I can't remember.
He was like the cook on Wet Hot American Summer, and he's like,
okay. I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember his name.
I saw him in the trailer. He's like the one actor I like immediately recognized, playing like one of the guys that's like kind of helping the slaves. So, I'll probably check it out. I have no idea if it's going to be any good at all, but it's worth at least checking out.
Yeah.
That's what is coming up in the next week. So we'll talk about what's coming up after that next week on the podcast. Until then, check out our website, TVEnthusiast.com. I just put up an article about the return of quality for SyFy and how SyFy as a channel went through this period where it was just ghost hunting reality shows, and so bad they're not even funny to watch. They're not even unintentionally funny. Movies. That was SyFy's bread and butter for years, after they changed their name. Because when they changed their name, I remember a lot of people were outraged. I didn't really care. I was just like, it's just the name, who cares? But soon after that, it became clear that the reason they changed the name to the same thing, SyFy, but spelled differently, was so they could have an excuse to show stuff that wasn't remotely sci-fi.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
And they, it was turned into wrestling and really, really bad movies. Like I said, so bad they're not even unintentionally funny. They just go beyond that point. And all these ghost hunter reality shows, it just got really ridiculous. I mean, there were multiple ones. Wasn't like one ghost hunter show. There were 10. It was getting way over the top. So those days are now behind us. We talked about The Magicians today. We've talked about The Expanse before. This is the new SyFy. And if you listen to our spring preview, it's not all good stuff that's coming back to SyFy. They have some kind of bad picks too. Winona Earp being among them. They have a Van Helsing series. It's going to be about the great granddaughter of Van Helsing or something that also looks really cheesy and bad. But that being said, the conclusion I came to in the article is that even if there are some bad choices being made, The Expanse, Killjoys, Dark Matter, 12 Monkeys, The Magicians, all of these have second seasons. So those bad shows existing doesn't take away from the fact that those good shows exist and there's more of them coming. So I wrote that article. That's my most recent article I put up on the site. And that's it for me. Do you have anything to plug, Will?
Nope, I don't.
Okay, so check in with us on Monday, I believe, and we'll have up we recorded on Sundays, our comic podcast. We're going to talk about the Agent Carter season finale, as well as Legends of Tomorrow, the one Arrowverse show that's still on until late March.
Yeah.
And that's it. So thank you, everybody, for listening to the Weekly Set, the Television Enthusiast podcast. Night.
Night.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@tventhusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage